as it stands now, there is UN aid getting into Gaza. The one testing site in Gaza for 2 million people are COVID, destroyed by bombing. The vaccination rate in Gaza, 2%. There are reports of an attempt by, or there are reports, nothing confirmed at this point, that the Israeli government is beginning to start to round up Palestinians with Israeli citizenship in Israel proper, that basically the assault on the Palestinians is just continuing in a different manner, this time within Israel. Here is Robert Gates running interference. This is, he was Obama's Secretary of Defense, I believe. It was Bush's as well. Here he is on with John Dickerson. You know what the problem here, folks, is? The problem is that the Palestinians just won't take yes for an answer. I just want to be clear. When you look back to the what was ostensibly offered them back at the end of the century, the last century, and you'll hear the talking points. They were offered 98% of the West Bank. I just want to remind you that, like, if you make a deal with someone about your house, let's say you're going through a divorce, I'm going to give you 98% of the house. The only thing I want to keep is the sink in the kitchen, the oven in the kitchen, the dishwasher and the refrigerator, and the bathroom. Those are all I'm taking. You can have the rest of the house. The point is that house is not going to function. You are not going to be able to function in that house because you're not having access to water or facilities that you need that are crucial for the infrastructure of the house. That is what that offer was. But here is Robert Gates telling us that the real problem is that the Palestinians are just not grateful enough.
Is it consistent with U.S. national interests and values to leave the Palestinians out in the cold?
I certainly don't think it's consistent with our values. But, you know, John, the truth is almost every president has made a real effort. And so these efforts have been stymied time and time again. And I would say there have been Israeli prime ministers who were actually interested in a solution. But the Palestinians couldn't bring themselves to say yes.
How do you grade President Biden's handling of the issue?
I think that the U.S. not being front and center was probably not a bad thing. I think letting the Egyptians, others take the lead. The loudest voices for a ceasefire were coming from Europe and from the United States, not from the Arab states, although Egypt certainly played a role in negotiating the ceasefire.
You mentioned President Biden was not publicly saying a number of things, not putting public pressure on the Israelis.
I think sometimes the United States can achieve its objectives more effectively by playing a behind-the-scenes role than by being out in front. When the United States is out in front, it automatically creates lots of antibodies in a lot of different places. But if the U.S. is playing a constructive role behind the scenes, often it can be much more effective.
The idea that the Palestinians just couldn't say yes is, part of the reason why the United States can't play an effective role out in front, because they have not been an honest broker over the past 20 years. And I love the idea that when Israel is bombing the Palestinians, they are bombing Hamas. But when Israel can't get to yes, it's the Palestinians who say no. People should just watch this. when people are dying, there are no Palestinians. There's only Hamas. But when anybody is exercising any type of, they're not going with the program or anything like that, it's the Palestinians.
Mhm.
That's the way this works. That's the way that, I mean, that's just, it's subtle stuff, but it's just like, it is a way of denying sort of the humanity of Palestinians.
How about the other subtle stuff there, or not so subtle stuff about how the United States called for a ceasefire? He leaves out that they repeatedly blocked the United Nations resolution for a ceasefire until Biden was finally like, okay, maybe, behind the scenes. But the Arab states, you hear him say that?
Yep.
The Arab states didn't call. So, because don't you guys get it? The Arab states, including the Palestinians and Hamas, you know, all they know is violence. That's like the implicit undercurrent in this conversation. And I mean, it's like the fact that there are people on the left in this country now that are beginning to see this as a systemic racism, colonialism issue. It's helpful because then you can see that kind of garbage for what it is. And that's what that was.